Yay!
Yay, I think we're live now.
Yeah, we're live.
Okay, it's
Okay,
like being
cool.
in theater.
I know. So you're in some random co-working space.
Yes, it's not random. It's called Serendipity Labs, and I'm in Wauwatosa, Wisconsin.
Okay. Well,
They would want me
we
to
gotta do what we gotta do.
I have to give them some love. You know how that is. So.
Oh, totally. No, it's great. Well, listen, let's get started. My name's Emily Clay. I'm the co-founder of IllumeHire, and we are building a career empowerment platform for mid-career professionals. It includes resources, tips, advice from experts like our friend Amy today. And so coming soon, we are creating a premium community where we're going to be featuring mentorship, boot camp, content, the works. So super excited about that. And that will be by the end of the year. So thank you, Amy. We're super excited to have you.
Yes, I'm excited to be here.
So let me go through Amy's background. So Amy has been an executive coach for over 10 years. And she's been with companies like Men's Warehouse, Genentech, Challenger, Gray, and Christmas. And she now owns her own firm called Better Path Coaching, where she helps executives, leaders, and professionals uncover their hidden strengths, navigate their career transitions, as well as being able to define their career story. I think that's especially important when you have a transition in play. So today we're going to be talking about uncovering hidden strengths and secrets around that, and then how to navigate through a career reinvention. And then we're also going to be talking about the career story piece and tips about how to get started with that. So with that, I'm going to ask the first question. So today we are going through the hidden strengths. So I wanted to find out, what are the biggest pieces of advice that you would give in order to uncover hidden strengths?
Yes, great question. And I'm hoping I'm not echoing, guys, because I'm in a co-working space and I'm by myself.
No, you're fine.
Awesome. Well, one of the things I thought that might be helpful is to put a little context around mid-career professional, because I think that people define that a little differently. And so someone who's a mid-career professional, has 10 to 15 years of experience already kind of under their belt. And I'm hoping some of the people that have joined today might start identifying with that.
And maybe even more, maybe 20.
Yeah, no, I would actually say it can range from about 10 to 20 plus years, 25. And that's kind of fascinating in and of itself, but we won't go into that. But the reason I bring that up is because people who are at mid-career probably have at least, they're an expert or they have some expertise in at least one area, a certain functional area. They, of course, may be looking to get promoted in the company. They want to be recognized for how they're adding value or bringing value. And they could be feeling really passionate about what they do. Or on the flip side, they might feel like they've hit a peak or they're burned out and they want to do something different. And the reason I bring that up is because when I was thinking about this last night, I do a lot of thinking sometimes at odd hours. And what I thought about is, before sort of saying, how do you uncover the strengths, is, well, why would this be even something that mid-career professionals would even be thinking about? And I think there's really two things that play in. If you think about the fact that if you've got 10 to 15 years of experience, under your belt or more, like we just said, that means you've spent years, in different jobs, working with different types of responsibilities. You've had different bosses. Maybe if you've changed companies, different roles, and different cultures. And so when you come to a point in your career where there can be a life-changing event like job loss, or something happens and you decide that you want to switch careers, there's a lot of delayering of all of that to try to figure out, well, what is it that I'm great at? What is it that I want to do? And especially if you're not feeling great about where you're at. That often happens when I meet with people who've been in, if they've been in an outplacement situation. So there's this delayering that needs to happen. And the other thing I think is that as our careers progress and as we progress, our values evolve, and what we want in a culture or in a workplace culture also evolves. And so we may not feel as connected or clear about who we are, what we're great at, but we know there are things that are changing. So the 3 ways that I think that you can really, I like to say, discover your strengths is to really 3 paths to discovery. And this is not necessarily some top secret, but I'm hoping for some people it might even be an affirmation. And those 3 ways are through reflection, evaluation, and action. And so I want to talk about each. Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
And so what do we mean by reflection? I see this a lot because I've worked in outplacement for quite a number of years, and prior till January of this year, that's what I was doing. And often when I would meet with professionals who had 15 to even 20 years of experience, there's so much, and many of us are used to just, go, accomplish. And there's very little time being spent on people actually reflecting on what they've done over those years, because they're just busy working.
Right.
That's it. They're knocking things out left and right. And one of the things that I thought was really interesting is when you meet someone who's had a stop at some point in their career, is to ask them, the first time they really think about their skills is when they have to rewrite a resume. And then that becomes a long, arduous thing. And so the point there is that what people don't necessarily do is spend time actually thinking about what got them where they are today and why that is. And sometimes it can even go as far back as childhood. Maybe there was, you had a parent who you were looking to aspire to be like, or a mentor or someone. So what reflection does is it allows us to actually step back and look at key moments or key experiences that have been pivotal in our professional development in our career. And one quick way that you can do that, and that can also be valuable, especially if you're thinking about changing careers, is identifying transferable skills.
Right.
And actually literally going back and looking at, I would say, key experiences in your past to determine what were some transferable skills that I was using while I was in school, while I was in these roles, when I was volunteering, and to actually map that out. I know that might sound, like a little weird or strange, but when
and being honest with yourself and asking others and being willing to get that feedback that might not be so awesome, or it might be great to go, oh, I didn't even think about that direction.
Yeah, and I'll give you just a quick example. I had a female client who, when I was working in outplacement, she was a PR communications professional. She had worked in the same company for 10 years, and she had worked in one industry. So when her job loss happened, what happened was there was a shock. It was a shock to her system, for one, because it happened in a way that wasn't expected. But what mostly happened was her confidence dropped significantly because she felt like she wasn't any good anymore because her company had let her go. The beautiful thing about transferable skills is that what she did know is, in this case, she knew what she was good at. And so what she decided to do was to go to become an independent consultant and hang a shingle and start her own business, which she did, which is what we worked on and helped her get up to speed. And it was her transferable skills that when she put those into action, she started getting clients, she started building her confidence, she started getting feedback, and lo and behold, she actually started working for organizations and companies that were in different industries, which really affirmed how transferable her skills really were. So reflection is one. The second is evaluation. And this is not something that would necessarily be a surprise to any corporate professional that might be on the call, but clearly, what do we typically do in our workplaces is people want to evaluate our skills, so through assessment. And I know on the last Illum Hire event that you had, there was discussion about using things like StrengthsFinder, Myers-Briggs, things like that. And why is that helpful? Well, evaluation helps us to kind of get a snapshot picture of where we are right now. What's happening?
Those are mainly personality tests, just to be clear.
Yeah, well, some are personality tests, but StrengthsFinder, for example, is actually one that is not. It is meant to actually identify strengths, and you get results back of your 5 top strengths. but
Okay.
DISC is, and Myers-Briggs definitely are.
Okay.
So there is a survey that I wanted to mention on this call that is called the VIA Character Survey. This
Yeah,
is a
I'd
free
never heard of
survey.
it.
Yeah,
Okay.
I hadn't either. I was doing some research, and actually another fellow friend and coach had mentioned it to me. VIA stands for Values in Action. And what it really does is it looks at 24 of your character strengths. The belief is that we all possess these strengths to some degree, but when you take the assessment, you begin to see what your top character strengths are. And one reason this, I think, can be very useful, especially for a mid-career professional, especially somebody who may be contemplating a career change, is that it gives you a more holistic picture about your skills, but not just your skills, your character. You know, the way, what your values are, what you tend to put forth as being important for you. Again, as your career is progressing, your values may be changing.
Yeah, perfect. And Eric just put up the URL.
I see that in the chat.
That's great. Okay.
The other way that you can do a sort of informal
and that one's free, right? Is the VIA one free? Okay.
The VIA is free.
Great.
Another way to do it, which is kind of interesting, is through, and this is through like the positive psychology bent, is they have a suggestion of a two-step process where you think about somebody that you admire greatly. And this is where you're going to assess your strengths and weaknesses. So if you think about someone you admire, you think about what are the strengths that you really admire about that person, and what are their weaknesses, right?
Yeah, and what you want to adopt from them, you know, what you want to take away. Yeah. Love it.
And start with them, and then ask that same question though back to yourself. And the reason this can be useful, especially if you're working with someone, a coach or someone else, or even somebody who wants to help you, is that when people write sort of their list of weaknesses, sometimes there's a tendency to want to hone in on those, especially considering the circumstance of why you may be considering a change, or why you may be looking for something. And so the opportunity there is, because we all possess strengths, is to really then work on uncovering, well, what are some of my strengths really? And this is where maybe exploring what your transferable skills are, talking out some of the decisions about key experiences of how you got to where you are, can be ways to help you do that.
Oh, that's great.
And then the other thing, and I'm just kind of making sure I don't miss a beat.
No, that's good. Thanks.
The fun one, discovery through action. And I know that we're going to be talking about Dr. Ibira's book, but I wanted to just mention, what does that mean? Well, discovering your strengths through action it's sort of ironic. It's sort of the exact opposite of introspection. It's saying, rather than spending time going inward, why not discover your strengths? Because clarity can be revealed through action. It's about going out in the world and being experimentative and trying on different things that can help you to sense into your skills, and also sense into not just your skills, but your values, things that matter to you at the time that you're doing it. And what I like about this is, what it does is it takes away the idea of how we often approach things, which is, okay, I want to get from A to B, so I'm going to plan it out and I'm going to just do it. It's very heady. It's very strategy driven.
Introspection, right. Exactly.
This is different in that we look at, well, how could I apply the skills that I have, but in a different way? And so what it really does is it allows you to be a little more exploratory in framing different types of questions that could get you out and about and experimenting by actually doing things like, well, okay, well, what skills would I need if I had worked in sales all my life, but now I want to teach? Maybe I'm interested in teaching sales. What skills do I need? Right. Or really, who should I know? Where could I go to learn more about this? Are there gaps that I'll need to close in terms of my skills? And so the encouragement is to actually move into action, to get moving and experimenting and trying things.
I loved when you said earlier about asking yourself, what are you known for? When you're trying to, really uncover your strengths, what are you known for? I love that. And asking, people you work with, asking your friends, I think that's really interesting. Like, I've never thought of that, but.
Well, so part of the, that's again, going through introspection. Sometimes for some people, it may be challenging to be introspective. And so an evaluative approach is to have somebody asking you direct questions like, what are you known for? That
Yeah.
helps people zero in immediately on, or maybe you say, what are the 3 things that you think that you have mastered in your career? You know, if you think of mastery, it means that you've practiced it again and again and again, and there's a track record of actually how well you're able to do that, and that it makes a difference in a company or an organization or for a customer, that you can create an impact based on what you know. And that can be very helpful, especially for someone who's feeling like, especially at a time of job loss or something like that, where just the world is pretty gloomy and doomy, or they're just burned out. They have no desire to do what they've done. And so even if you say, what are you known for? What it might actually do is affirm even more strongly that what they've been doing, the identity that they've possessed, is not necessarily who they want to be now. And so what it can do is spark the opportunity to start beginning to talk about the what's next.
Yeah, no, I love that. I was also going to mention, so you talked a little bit about mastery. And so Daniel Pink talks about the 3 elements that really resonate with people in terms of motivation, and talks about mastery. He talks about purpose, and he talks about autonomy. And so, you know, as you're transitioning out of or pivoting into something else, you know, it's difficult to immediately have that mastery, right? It's going to take a little while. But I like those 3 elements too, in thinking about what's going to really be relevant for you as an individual, you know, customized, if you will.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. And then the other question, and next, did you want to talk any more about that, about the strengths piece?
I think the other thing I just wanted to mention, because I did want to mention another resource, which I realized I didn't,
okay.
is when we were talking about this notion of, discovering your strengths through action, because that's really about, you know, changing what it is that you do, trying something new, identifying projects that can get you feeling what it's like to be in a new line of work or doing something different, is that the way to go about that is to actually get applied learning. So that means doing something different than what you've been doing. Now, for some people, if they're still working, so that maybe they're working and they're fairly, you know, they feel settled in what they're doing, or they have a plan and they're not immediately looking to jump ship, you know, that might be in the form of taking on a side hustle or doing something like some freelance work. But for somebody who's, you know, at a point where they've left a job or they're ready to make that switch, it could even be you farming out your skills and finding a company or a place that you want to volunteer for or work for, and sign up and say, I'm willing to do this for free or low cost. And that can be actually very compelling, particularly for people who feel even less sure about what they want to do. Because sometimes just the mere act of trying or doing something new. I had a client who made a major transition. He had been a top leader in a company, and he had lots of change happening. They were moving to a new location. They were ready to sort of have a job that had less responsibility. He started doing very unique side hustles. He was an engineer and he really wanted to use his hands more. He started doing concrete work, and he worked as a short order cook, and he did several different types of jobs before he landed in a job that was very different than what he had. And so the dots that were connecting for him was, for him, being introspective didn't quite work. What he wanted to do is he wanted to get out and be in the world and try different things and experiment as a way to help him affirm what his strengths were and what he's really great at. And he wound up getting hired in a company as an individual contributor in a much lower level role, but now he's advising the leaders because he had been one. And so he's in a great position where he can add value and be extremely happy with what he's doing.
So there's a couple of things I wanted to touch on before we go to the next question, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I loved it when we were talking the other day and you said, you know, look at, you know, something that you could be good at or have the potential to be good at, but then also look at what really energizes you. And then I think the book reference that you were referring to earlier is the one by Marcus Buckingham. Is that right? And Donald Clifton. It's called Now Discover Your Strengths.
Yeah, well, those are the two that came up with the Strengths Finder. Yes.
Oh, okay. Sure. So those are the two things that they came out of that book that
Yes.
resonated. Okay. That you
Yeah.
wanted to discuss. Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought that was great. Just, look at your
Oh, for sure.
potential, right? Look at, keep going.
Yeah. Well, to think of your strengths as not just I know how to do them, but that you also have the potential to do well. So maybe you've done something, you did a project or you were part of something and you noticed that, oh, hey, I'm actually, I'm better at writing copy or I'm better at selling things than I thought I was. I may have potential for that. And that's important for people who are in mid-careers to notice things like that, because it's not always necessarily going to be in the role that we're in, but we're
Right.
in experiences, and especially if we get feedback telling us so. So that's
Right.
another source, magical source, maybe source number 4 path is just literally through feedback. What are you hearing? What are people telling you? What are your customers or clients telling you? And if they're saying, we really love it, you're great at it, that's something you're paying attention to.
No, that's great. So talk to me a little bit about career reinvention. What advice would you have for someone who is making a career pivot? I mean, obviously uncovering the strengths, great, but then what? Because it can be, it can be difficult, in mid-career where you decide, you know what, I don't want to work for a newspaper,
Sure. Well, a couple things. One is I do want to mention that Dr. Dawn Graham, who is, she's kind of an expert in the area of career. Her book is called Career Transformation, Career Switchers is her book.
Oh,
just
okay.
a quick free-ish resource for those of you that are joining. If you go to LinkedIn Learning, she has a whole entire module, course on switching careers.
Oh, great. So if you have premium, then it's free, right?
Yeah, it's called Career Switchers. But one of the things that really when you're thinking about transition is, and what most people may not realize is that there's actually there are stages of transition. And so that's critical when you're thinking about making a career change. And those stages are the beginning stage. And this is one thing I did take away, and I know we were going to mention it, is Dr. Hermiana Ibarra's book.
Yeah.
Hermania, thank you. And I used to be better at my Spanish. Thank you for that. Working identity. And actually, she's really the one who plugs this and says that when you are changing careers, you are literally changing identities. And that's key, because people they get confused about changing a job versus changing a career. Changing a job is just finding something where you can plug in and get started. Changing a career means going in a very new direction where you've got to know your transferable skills, or at least have a good handle on them. And so the stages of transition are such. You have the beginning stage where you are starting to shed this identity that you've held for many years. So when my client, who had been a top leader in a company, big organization, big responsibilities, was saying, but this was a thoughtful transition in that he wanted to do it, but he didn't necessarily know where he would end up. So that was kind of interesting. The second stage is the middle stage. It's sort of that morphing stage where you're sort of in between the identity that you held, and you have one foot in that world and you have another foot in I'm trying to figure out what's next world, my new next world. And that is what she calls the messy stage. She calls it I think her word was like, it's a liminal period where you can feel very foggy, very uncertain. This period can also last longer than most people want it to. It's very unsettling, very uncomfortable, but it's critical to any transition, because it's out of that stage that you get to the third stage, or what might be seen as a final-ish stage, but it's not so much final, it's going to propel you to your new beginning.
Yes.
And so this is the stage that I like to say in people who are looking at making a career change or ready to not seek a job, is that this is where you gain clarity. It's actually then, after the messy stage.
Yeah.
And the reason that this is important is because when you're forming and storming and changing and going through these stages of transition, every human being that's in relationship with you is also going through it. And that is unsettling to others. And so what's very imperative is to not only understand that there are stages and that they're different for everyone. They can last longer or shorter depending on the person, depending on various situations, and really their readiness for them, which we won't go into all of that. But that the people and the communities or whoever supports you, who's ever in relationship with you, is also having to go and experience that you're changing.
So
and
that's
so
what I was gonna, that's what I was
Yeah.
gonna touch on, was that people in your circle, not everyone's gonna be super supportive, whether it's a parent or a sibling, you are disrupting the status quo.
Absolutely.
And the order of the family or whatever. And so you might
Yeah.
have a supportive partner, but somebody else might try to push it aside. And so just know that that's their baggage. That is
Yeah.
not yours.
It's
And
not,
so,
but
and so I'm maybe saying it from
you
experience.
sound like this is experience. I was going to say, you sound like this is a little personal.
And so surround yourself, with your really good friends who are going to give you honest feedback, right? But who are also going to lift you up and go, you got this. And so I think I wrote something about setting boundaries, and it was kind of based on that. So that's why I wanted to chime in about that.
I'm so glad you chimed in, because that's true. And it's also about having healthy boundaries also, because that middle stage is a killer, you
will lose sleep. Yeah.
You will. And it can leave people feeling very confused about, did I make it's that regret stuff that starts, and all these things happen, especially in our mid-career. And as we're sort of eking towards the late career or a next career or re-careering, this can be very daunting for people.
Yeah.
So this is also why I personally have a very strong interest in wanting to really support and walk with people through that process, because you need a kind, gentle ear. Kindness was my top value strength. I laughed. I was like, of course that's me. But it's also because you need someone who's going to keep you moving through those. So
accountability, sure.
To the clarity, right? And so to say, yes, it's messy, but you're going to come out on the end okay. And I'm being sort of facetious there, but you get my point. So yeah, absolutely.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
So then I love that. And then in terms of creating your own career story, so I want to kind of keep this short, for maybe 4 or 5 minutes. But, just what are the main elements in terms of really honing in on your career story? And would you recommend different ones? Like maybe you have, 2 sentences, and then you have one that's a little bit longer, and how would you go about that?
Yeah, well, so the career story is really, it sort of goes into that uncovering of your strengths with the reflection piece. It's kind of a little bit of both, of reflection and evaluation. And what it really does is it's a narrative that you're going to form that is based upon your journey, your career journey, but to really emphasize key moments or key elements of your strengths and your accomplishments that will help people understand sort of how you got to where you are and where you're heading. And so a career story is really about helping people to understand if you're vying for something or you're interested in something, helping them connect the dots. And you're going to do that in a very short way. And so what it's really doing is you're deciding what narrative, first of all, that you want to tell. For some people, it might be, I want to have a hero's journey kind of story.
The Joseph Campbell deal. Yeah.
Yeah. Or maybe it's, I want to be I had to figure it all out on my own kind of thing. I never, I sort of the rags to riches story or something. And I'm not an expert in these areas, but I'm making some assumptions here that when you have a theme or a sense of what is the story that I want to paint, and the reason that you want to decide the narrative is because you want to think about who's going to hear it, who's your audience, and what's the outcome that you're driving for. What's important is to talk about major chapters of your career or significant pivotal points in your career that help sort of make the story cohesive and explain certain things that may have happened in your career and to how you got to where you are and why that's positioning you or why it is that you're pursuing what it is that you want. What's really helpful also is to draw out key things that you've accomplished, or certain roles in your career that would reinforce this narrative again, to help people understand the value that you bring, or things about, maybe it's valuable lessons that you learn, and that translates to wisdom or understanding or new knowledge or
Sure.
new insights that show that you are also human, and that you have a way of being able, that you can change, and other types of things. And this is also very important at mid-career, because there's a lot of assumptions being made about people being fixed. You know, somebody who's worked at the same company for 18 years, I know the first question in somebody's mind is, they'll never change. All they know is one way. And that's a real barrier, particularly for people who may have worked somewhere and are mid-career, and they've spent a good chunk of their career. They've had a lot of experiences, but it's all at one company. That doesn't look good.
Right. No, I know somebody who was let go from IBM Watson, and one interview she had after that, they said, "Can you even still learn?" She was in her 50s, and so, wow, really? And she'd worked for IBM for a long time. But at any rate, you know what? I am going to ask one more question, because then that will give time for people to ask questions of their own. So there is, I forgot to mention earlier, sorry. There's an ask a question button down here. So if anybody has any questions, please feel free to chime in, and then we'll respond.
I just want to make a last point. So with the career story, the whole point is, sorry about that, because I was.
No, it's okay. I probably interrupted.
I just wanted to tie it back. You want to tie the story back to the why you're going to be making the ask you're making today. So what is it about? What, you know, often career stories are used they could be used as a who am I response. If you're in an interview or you're networking, maybe you're meeting a new contact, and you ask the question, should they be long or short? I think it depends on the narrative you want to choose and the reason for why. So these have to be created. And so one of the things that I did, that I'm hoping we'll be able to share with all of you, is I put together a short infographic that walks you through some steps to help you start working on defining your career story. If this is something that is of interest to you or you've never done before, you know, you're asking to reflect on your past. And
Nick posted that. I think he could post it again, but he posted it earlier.
Okay, there you go. Yeah. Well, thank you, Nick.
and that's Eric who did that.
And that's Eric. Sorry, that's right. Hi, Eric, for Nick.
Eric poses me. No, that's great. So then I'm going to ask one more question, so that if anybody has any questions about this or want to do kind of a deeper dive on something, then please let us know. So the question is, what are the main themes you feel are really important to focus on when you are trying to articulate your own curiosity and being a life learner? Because as you said, you know, mid-career professionals are faced with, you know, steeped with stereotypes and kind of, you know, not being with it and cool and learning all the time.
Yeah, well, I think some themes are around resilience. So one of the things that I think, yes, and also mastery. I think we shouldn't be apologizing for our strengths, right? And if you've been able to navigate through a professional life where you've had successes, you've had challenges that you've faced, but you've overcome them, you've learned lessons, you've stood in your values and done things that are considered courageous, or that other leaders, if you're a leader, for example, that people haven't done, or you don't necessarily even have to be a leader, you've stood in your truth. These are stories that I think transcend all things, because it's really about people being strong, resilient, and courageous.
Yeah,
and so
I like that, the resilience piece.
Themes like that always, I think, transcend age, race, religion, you name it. They're transcending, and those can be very positive.
I think also just being really animated and excited about what you're talking about. You know, I think those are keys of, you know, a key to when you are interviewing with people, to come across as super animated, even if that's not usually your thing. Maybe you're typically an introvert, but I think it's super important.
Well, and then, so that just, as soon as I heard you say that, the first thought I thought in my head, because obviously as a coach, and I've worked with many professionals and leaders when they've made transitions, is one value of being introspective is when you can recognize what you're not great at. So if you know that you're going to be interviewing for some top job, or you want to move into a direction you've never been before, and I really suck at how I do this or that, then invest in yourself and get someone to offer their help. And I'm not saying that as a plug as a coach, although that is what I do. I'm saying that because you're smarter than that. You have the potential to be or do what you want, and you want to take advantage of all resources that are going to help you get there. So don't be afraid to make an investment in yourself at this point in your career as well. You absolutely deserve it and should.
And being honest about what you're not running towards and why, why that fear is standing in the way. I mean, quite candidly, it was technology for me. And so I had to learn a ton, and I need to learn more. But, but instead of going to fear now, I go into curiosity and go, okay, can I find a tutorial? Okay, I can't lean on somebody else for this. I need to find out.
Right.
And then if I've exhausted that, then I will ask questions. But when I find it, then I'm like, oh, that's a small win. Yay me. Yeah. Not that hard.
Absolutely. And I think just a willingness to even say, you know what, this is new for me, and I'm excited to learn, to your point. I'm curious and interested, and it's new for me. And so that's another example, I think, of just being resilient and curious, at the same time, showing that you can do it and that you're there to win. So
great. Okay, I've got one question from Nick, another Nick. So what do you think are some of the best strengths to highlight with employers as a mid-career professional to separate yourself from early career professionals? Maybe just the best words and recommendations to use to describe mid-career strengths.
Okay.
So I'll say that again. What do you think are some of the best strengths to highlight with employers? So I mean, one thing, so versus younger candidates, what's the big deal about you just because you're older and have experience? That's great, but like what else? So I mean, one thing I would just chime in terms of an answer is having an age diverse team, and maybe not asking about age of the, what the ages are of the team, because you probably can't say, but, talking about it in a story of being on a team where, oh my gosh, we had all different kinds of, the disparity of the age was 25 years. And as a result, we were able to be super innovative and problem solve, talking about cognitive diversity, and maybe asking questions around what's the importance of cognitive diversity to your team or something like that.
Yeah, I also think, and those are good. I'm just thinking, I always think of client examples. I had a client who was in the West Coast creative field. Many of he was interviewing at a company where everybody would have been younger than him, including his boss.
Yeah.
And so I think that threw him at first, because he wasn't quite sure, how am I going to fit in? Because clearly there are some generational differences, not extremely, because he was kind of cool, and hip. But the point was, I think that what was really awesome about what we talked about was that one of the things that he did bring is he brought management skills and expertise.
And he talked about that in the interview.
And he talked about it. And he also talked about how well he worked with helping develop people.
I like that too.
And this was something that this particular team really needed. They were infighting and, some of the stuff, and it was preventing this team, from actually excelling and moving mountains and doing the things that they were being charged to do inside the company. And I'm just using this corporate example because it's what came to my mind. The point is that he didn't apologize for the value he felt he could bring. And what helped him actually, and this is also a key for anyone who's interviewing for a job or an opportunity, is if you can get any insights, any tips on what are the problems and challenges that's going on in that place for that particular hiring manager in the company, your big win is to hone in on what are the things that you can do to come in and help turn that around or bring solutions.
I would add one more thing to that. When you were saying developing other people, that could be, if the manager is younger, that could be off-putting. So if you talk about, is it called 360, where you mentor each other? Is that what it's called?
Maybe.
Well, anyway, where it's mutual, right? You can learn from young people and maybe citing examples of that, where you had a really awesome team and one guy was, I don't know, talking about the multi-generational, the benefits of learning from others, no matter what generation they came from, it doesn't matter. So we used to joke at work about, the MultiGen Team. And anyway, I think having stories about that and talking about being able to be receptive to learning from somebody younger,
Oh, sure.
I don't know how you would articulate that, but I think it's important because otherwise it could be off-putting.
I agree. I think in this case, I didn't have a concern about that with this particular client because he had already been doing that, and he was pretty. Emotional intelligence always wins, and he had it, which is he already could assess and understand whether this particular hiring manager was feeling insecure because he was looking at bringing someone in on his team that would have, there was a little bit of I wouldn't just say even an age difference. It was more about experiential differences. They were clearly they had different levels of expertise. But the point here is that you shouldn't undervalue the value that you have. I think it's a matter of also that understanding that whenever you're looking to make a change or a transition, you're also trying to find a fit. And a fit, a happy marriage is when two things, combine and fit well. And so sometimes the reality of this also is that the reason change and things can take time is because they're not a fit and they're not a match. That doesn't mean that you're not a skillful person that has lots of value to add. And that's important to remember because often when we're embarking on something new, we are going to be met with rejection. We are going to be met with feedback, what maybe we don't want to hear, we don't like to hear. But we have to know when to listen and we have to know when to just sort of let it go in one ear and out the other and still move forward in our strengths. So I would definitely want to make sure that I say that.
No, I love that. I love that. Did you have anything else you wanted to add regarding tips for mid-career professionals?
I think I'm trying to think. I've covered a lot of ground today, and I'm hoping that, in review, that again, we all do have strengths and we all have stories. And one of the best ways to sort of uncover your strengths are to reflect on your career and to be more reflective in the standpoint of not that you want to be judgmental, but to be really thinking about pivotal times or key things that really stuck out that really you remember in a way that was positive, or even if it was a challenge, it made you better or it helped you in some way. If you will. That's very important. The second is absolutely assessments are great and they can help us to, form new words and new language and to be able to verbalize and talk about our skills in ways that we couldn't. It helps us with self-promotion. This is often where people struggle is when they're told, all right, I got to get out here and do this stuff. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to talk about myself. I don't want to sound like I got a big head. I live in the Midwest now. People don't do that in the Midwest. They're not living in New York, trying to be Jay-Z and Beyonce. They're not doing that, right? So you have to kind of help coax this out of folks. And then the last one is really, I love this distinction that Dr. Ibira makes about really one great way to learn is to just get out and try and do things that you've never done before or you've wanted to do, or as we said before, you've seen potential in yourself. You're curious. So following your curiosity and getting out there and trying it and doing it. Of course, that comes in various forms and shapes. And I could try to rattle all those off, and I'm not going to do that. The point is that sometimes we have to get out of our head and we have to get into action. And so that's what coaches are going to tell you that we're going to want you to do that. So,
and obviously it'll be super customized. But so can you talk to us a little bit about Better Path Coaching and provide your email address? I know that your website you're redesigning it, it's under construction. Can you offer a contact and how to reach you? And then if there was anything else you wanted to offer?
Yes, well, a couple of quick things. One is, please check out the infographic on defining your career story because there's two reasons why. One is because I wanted to walk you through just some steps to help you start building your career story, which can be very powerful and very pivotal, especially when you've had gaps or blemishes in your background. It helps you to not just cover them, but maybe have a nice way to explain them. At the bottom of that infographic, you're going to find my email as well as a link to my calendar So if you're somebody who's thinking about, I'm ready to make a change, or I'm ready to make a transition, or I've been thinking about it and I think this could help me and I'd really like to take this further, I'm ready to figure out how to move into action, then what I wanted to do for those of you that are on this call is to offer some individual coaching opportunities with me. So if you're somebody who's a little skeptical, or you've never had a coach and you just want to try out a session, or you want to have a conversation, I'm offering, this is a hugely discounted amount, as I was chatting with Emily in prep for our call. What I would normally value at $250 an hour, I am offering this session for $99, one session for $99. And if you're interested and you are ready to move the needle, so you want to work on your story, you may want to talk about your transition, where you are in your transition. And if you're really thinking about making a little more traction, I want to offer 3 sessions, which would normally be valued at about $750 for $297, which is honestly a steal. I have been working in this field for a lot. Kindness is my quality. I laughed when I thought about this, because you know what it says? It's like doing favors and good deeds for others, helping them and taking care of them. So
no, it's awesome. No, it's nice. It's the Illume higher price. It's awesome.
Yes, it's the Illume higher price. And so that's the other piece, is that I'm only extending this to the people who were so wonderful and took the time tonight to learn more about Illume Higher and what they're about. And we're in the early stages, and I'm excited to know about Illume Higher, because many of the people that I work with tend to identify at being mid-career or even late mid-career, if you will.
Sure.
And these are times that are not necessarily the best. So the other reason I wanted to give a discount is because I know that people are challenged right now for various reasons. COVID, people being not,
forest fires, you name it.
Fires, downsizing, feeling that they're being treated differently in the workplace because of who they look, what they look like and things like that. So I really wanted to do that as well. And so that's part of that.
Thank you so much for your time today. That wraps it up for now. But I also wanted to let everybody know that on October 6th, we have a happy hour at lunchtime. It's at 12 noon, and it's with Wendy Mayhew. She is an author and a public speaker. She wrote a book called Wiser: Definitive Guide to Starting a Business Over the Age of 50. And we'll be talking about the 5 characteristics of a successful entrepreneur. So with that, I will let everybody go. But thank you so much for joining us tonight. It was super fun. And now I can have my wine.
Oh, you are. Oh, look at me. I have water.
Oh, you're so perfect. It's happy hour. Come on.
Well, it's 7. It's almost 8 o'clock for us Midwesterners.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
I didn't partake in a happy hour tonight in prep for this, but thank you again, everybody who joined. And thank you so much, Emily, for the time.
Thank you. Bye, Amy.
Bye.